Beyonce, ma'am. Bae, my love. Honey, sit down, pour something cold, and lock the door because the moment I am about to walk y'all through is the reason every group chat in the culture broke tonight. Something just happened. Something the internet has not fully caught up to yet. Something so loud, so surgical, so unmistakably targeted that if you blink, you will genuinely miss the assassination that Beyonce just carried out on Jay-Z's own record. And I do mean assassination, because the hip-hop royal family did not just drop a song this week. Beyonce did not just bless a track. Beyonce did not just show up on Morning Dew drunk to sing Pretty over a beat while her husband caught up to her energy. No, Beyonce used every syllable, every rhyme, every clever little flip inside that song to say something the rest of us are only now beginning to decode. And once you hear what Beyonce actually smuggled into those bars, you will never listen to that song the same way again. So let me put it plainly, because this is going to be a wild one. Beyonce is rapping. Beyonce is scheming. Beyonce is stacking multi-syllable rhymes like she came up on the corner. And Beyonce, according to the chatter behind closed doors, is doing all of it as a message aimed at exactly one person on his own record in front of the entire world. This is not a love song. This is not a summer duet. This is a coded declaration of war wearing lipstick and a smile. Loves, I promise it gets messy, eh? Trust me when I tell you the chatter behind closed doors is that this song was never supposed to sound like this. The version everyone was supposed to hear was the polite one, the lover's anniversary one, the Carter family forever version. Something clean, something safe, something PR could stamp and send off. And then, allegedly, at the 11th hour, Beyonce pulled the record back. Beyonce rewrote her verses. Beyonce, from what the chatter behind closed doors is claiming, sat in that booth and said, if we are going to do this, we are going to do this on my terms. And what came out on the other side is the song that just detonated across every platform on earth. Morning Dew Drunk. Beyonce and Jay-Z and Baby, half the internet still thinks it is just a cute little R&B two-stepper. It is not. It is not. It is not. It is a scalpel dressed as a slow dance. It is a receipt dressed as a hook. It is Beyonce in the year 2026 deciding that the safest place to leave a warning is the last place her husband would think to look for one, inside the very song he asked her to appear on. Because here is what the culture is only now realizing. Beyonce on this record is out-rapping Jay-Z on Jay-Z's own song. Beyonce is using more consonants per bar than her husband. Beyonce is layering internal rhymes underneath melody like she has been secretly writing over Rockefeller beats in a locked room for 20 years. Beyonce is doing multi-syllable schemes about high school lockers, about biology class, about graduation, about grown woman appetites that would make the average listener choke on their morning coffee. Beyonce is embedding metaphors that go 2, 3, for different directions depending on how you read them. And Beyonce is doing it all while Jay-Z, the greatest rapper alive according to his own resume, is on the same track, visibly, audibly, mathematically struggling to match her intensity. That is the story. That is the actual headline. And nobody in mainstream media is saying it out loud, because saying it out loud means admitting the Queen just outclassed the King on his own turf. Say it with me. The Queen outclassed the King on his own record, on his own beat, in his own house. Let me pull the receipts, because I do not throw around a claim like this without evidence. And Beyonce earned every syllable of this analysis. Take the very first verse. Beyonce opens with the imagery of purple rain, deception, pain, watching everything wash away. Body's insane. How could you complain? And if you take the melody off that section, if you strip the harmony down to just the words on the page, what you are left with is a rap verse. A hard one. Multi-syllable stacked on multi-syllable. Rain, insane, complain, brain, campaign. That is not singing. Beyonce did that in a voice that half the country still thinks is just a pretty voice. Beyonce did it and dared us to notice. Beyonce wrote a bar so tight that the average listener sang along without realizing they were witnessing a technical demonstration. That is not accident. That is not luck. That is a woman with a pen who has been waiting decades to show us exactly how sharp that pen is, and choosing this song of all songs to finally uncap it. Beyonce, ma'am. Beyonce. Beyonce. Beyonce, what are you doing to us? Because here is where the story gets interesting. Here is where the culture starts asking uncomfortable questions. Once you accept that Beyonce is scheming at a rap god level on Jay-Z's own song, you have to ask why. You have to ask why now. You have to ask why Beyonce, in the year 2026, at the peak of Cowboy Carter's afterlife, with the Renaissance World Tour behind her, with every accolade in the industry already stacked on her mantle, decided at this exact moment to publicly outright the man who has been telling us for 2 decades that he is the greatest lyricist alive. And that is where the whispers from the inner circle turn into a scream, Because the word in the culture, the chatter that is running through every green room and every studio session tonight, is that Beyonce is not just flexing. Beyonce is sending a message. And the message is aimed directly at Jay-Z. Not at the fans, not at the critics, not at the culture at large. At one man, on one record, in one moment, engineered to make sure that man cannot pretend a shot did not land. Moving right along, let me tell you what the streets are whispering, and family, please receive this the way it is being delivered. Unconfirmed, but persistent, coming from multiple corners of the industry, and lining up with almost every public breadcrumb the Carter camp has dropped over the last 18 months. The chatter is that Beyonce has been quietly documenting. Beyonce has been quietly collecting. Beyonce has been quietly, patiently, methodically building a body of evidence about Jay-Z, about certain rooms Jay-Z has been in, about certain names Jay-Z has been near, about certain agreements Jay-Z has signed. And Beyonce, according to those same whispers, has decided that the safest place to hide a warning is inside a love song, which is exactly what Morning Dew Drunk sounds like when you play it once, and exactly what Morning Dew Drunk stops sounding like when you play it twice. Play it a third time, and the whole thing turns into a courtroom transcript set to a shuffling drum pattern. Play it a fourth time, and you start to notice how carefully Beyonce placed every word. Play it a fifth time, and you understand that the woman writing these lyrics was not writing them for the radio. Because now let us talk about Jay-Z's verse. Now let us talk about HOV. Now let us talk about the second half of this record, because HOV is on it. HOV is spitting. HOV is flexing. And HOV, in the eyes of anybody who has been paying attention, sounds like a man playing catch-up. Jay-Z opens with a nod to his ownership, to his wrist, to hating on his everything, the standard HOV posture. Jay-Z leans on Bonnie and Clyde imagery. Jay-Z sneaks in a Marcy reference, a Queensbridge reference, a wave cap reference. All the boom-bap era signals HOV reaches for when he needs to remind you where he came from. And Jay-Z is good on the record. Jay-Z will always be good on the record. Nobody is out here saying Jay-Z has lost the plot. But sitting next to Beyonce on this specific song at this specific moment, doing this specific tempo, chasing the sloppy morning imagery that Beyonce built first, Jay-Z sounds a half step behind. And a half step behind Beyonce is still leagues ahead of most of the game. But a half step behind Beyonce is not what HOV is used to being. HOV has been the one setting the pace for a quarter of a century. HOV has been the one everybody else was chasing. And on Morning Dew Drunk, for the first time on wax, Jay-Z is the one running to keep up with his own wife. Read that back. Let it land. And that is when the receipts start writing themselves, because Jay-Z has spent the last 12 months in defense mode. Jay-Z has been in court. Jay-Z has been in filings. Jay-Z has been in the news for reasons that have nothing to do with music. There is the civil case that got dismissed, but did not disappear from the timeline. There is the Diddy investigation that keeps circling back to old photos and old rooms and old rumors. There is the resurfaced federal report from October 2019 that mentions Jay-Z by name in the same paragraph as some of the most damaging names in modern American media. And there is the growing sense, this is what the inner circle keeps telling me, that Beyonce has watched all of this land at her front door and quietly decided that the family she built with Jay-Z is not going to be dragged into the next headline without a fight. Beyonce is not the woman standing beside a scandal with a blank expression anymore. Beyonce is the woman standing behind a scandal holding the receipts and deciding when the wind is going to change. So Beyonce is fighting. Beyonce is fighting on wax. Beyonce is fighting in couplets. Beyonce is fighting in the one arena where Jay-Z cannot use his lawyers, cannot use his executives, cannot use his corporate leverage. Beyonce is fighting Jay-Z as an artist. And family, that is why every real head is running back this record tonight with new ears. Because Beyonce finally figured out the one language Jay-Z cannot buy his way out of. The language he built his empire in. The language he taught her to speak. And Beyonce, with the same pen he sharpened, is writing her own liberation. Trust me when I tell you the numbers are already telling the story. Streams on Morning Dew Drunk are climbing at a rate the entire Roc Nation catalog has not seen in 3 years. The song is charting in 28 countries in its opening window. Genius has already annotated Beyonce's verse 3 times over. And every annotation is getting rewritten every hour as new fans catch a new layer. The record just cracked the Spotify top 5 in the United States, top 2 in the United Kingdom, and top 1 in half the Caribbean, which tells you everything you need to know about who the audience believes actually carried this song. And it tells you why Jay-Z, according to the chatter behind closed doors, has been quiet on social media since the moment this record hit streaming. HOV has not posted a single victory lap tweet. HOV has not reposted a single fan reaction. HOV has not thrown up a single stat about the streaming numbers. HOV, the man who lives on the timeline when his wife is winning, has gone completely dark on this specific release. And silence from a man as image-conscious as Jay-Z is louder than any statement he could write. Let me pull one more receipt for you, because this is the one nobody is talking about yet. Beyonce, on the second verse, buried under the harmonies, tucked into a hook most listeners will speed through, refers to the morning dew as sloppy and flips the imagery from something sweet into something raw. That flip is not accidental. That flip is Beyonce taking Jay-Z's own imagery and turning it inside out on his own song, because Jay-Z's next line immediately after tries to answer that flip. Jay-Z says he does not need anything new coming through, but he lets it slip that he has been running Malibu in an old school. And Beyonce's response, 3 bars later, is that she knows about the Malibu. Beyonce knows about the old school. Beyonce knows about who was in the passenger seat. And Beyonce chose to put that exact reference on the record, in their duet, on what half the world is calling their romantic comeback. Do you understand what Beyonce just did? Do you understand what Beyonce is telling us in plain English wrapped inside a hook? Beyonce put a receipt in a song, and Jay-Z, either because he did not catch it or because he could not stop it, let the receipt ride to the master. Beyonce is not asking for permission. Beyonce is not begging for space. Beyonce is reminding Jay-Z on Jay-Z's own beat that Beyonce sees everything. Beyonce remembers everything. And Beyonce, if she chose to, could put the entire empire under a magnifying glass by the next lunar cycle. Now, let me remind you where we are in this story, because if you just wandered in, if you just clicked because the thumbnail caught you, let me pull you all the way up to speed. Beyonce and Jay-Z have been married since 2008. Beyonce and Jay-Z have 3 children, Blue Ivy, Rumi, and Sir Carter, who are collectively worth more to the culture than most small nations. Beyonce and Jay-Z have weathered every rumor, every infidelity headline, every elevator incident, every Lemonade lyric, every Becky with the good hair discourse. Beyonce and Jay-Z have publicly reconciled, publicly re-fallen in love, publicly toured together, publicly built the myth of a hip-hop royal family that no headline could ever crack. And Beyonce, up until this exact record, has always kept the marriage on a stage that only Beyonce controls. But now the walls of that stage are thinning, and Morning Dew Drunk is the crack that lets us see through them. And once a wall like that starts to crack, family, it does not uncrack. It only widens. Because here is what the chatter behind closed doors keeps circling back to. Beyonce, before this song was ever recorded, was allegedly not planning to appear on any Roc Nation adjacent project this year. Beyonce was building the Cowboy Carter follow-up. Beyonce was in the studio with a rotating cast of country and gospel and R&B producers, working on the next chapter of Beyonce's solo mythology. And then, without warning, Beyonce pivoted. Beyonce cleared her schedule. Beyonce blocked out a 2-week window in June, and Beyonce recorded her contributions to Morning Dew Drunk in what one engineer, off the record, described as a set of sessions that felt more like an intervention than a collaboration. Read that quote back. Let it sit with you. An intervention. Not a duet. Not a love song. An intervention. And that is what Beyonce released on July 4th to a world that thought it was getting a summer bop. If you are still reading this as a happy couple release, you are not paying attention. Beyonce is not doing happy couple releases anymore. Beyonce is doing exits. Anyway, listen. Before we go any deeper into the receipts, I need to hear from you. Drop it in the comments right now. Is Beyonce actually sending a message on this record? Or am I hearing schemes in a song that is really just a summer duet? Because half the culture is convinced Beyonce is speaking in code, and the other half is convinced I have been staring at genius annotations for too long. So tell me what your ears are telling you. Tell me whether Beyonce, in the year 2026, on Jay-Z's own song, just quietly took the crown back. And while you are down there, hit that subscribe button, because the next chapter of this story is going to break within the week, and I do not want you finding out from anybody else. Consider that your notification. Consider this your inside seat. Consider this your one advantage over the timeline that will spend the next 7 days catching up to what we already know tonight. Now, back to the timeline, because this is where the story turns into a full-body chill. Because the whispers from the inner circle are not stopping at the song. The whispers are extending outward into what allegedly comes next. And what allegedly comes next, family, is a body of information Beyonce has been sitting on since the earliest days of the marriage. Beyonce, according to multiple independent voices in the industry, has kept receipts. Beyonce, according to those same voices, has kept dates. Beyonce, according to those same voices, has kept names. Beyonce has kept photographs. Beyonce has kept voice notes. Beyonce has kept everything a woman married to a man like Jay-Z would rationally keep, because Beyonce has always understood that survival in this industry is measured in what you know that the other side does not know you know. And Beyonce, on this record, has just signaled publicly, coyly, elegantly, that Beyonce knows enough to level the pyramid. Level the pyramid. That is not my phrase. That is a phrase that has been circulating in certain corners of the culture for the last 72 hours. And the pyramid in this context is not just Jay-Z. The pyramid is the entire apparatus that has protected Jay-Z, promoted Jay-Z, insulated Jay-Z, and defended Jay-Z against every allegation that has arrived at his gate in the last decade. The pyramid is Roc Nation. The pyramid is the industry. The pyramid is the network of executives and lawyers and publicists who have made sure that every headline about Jay-Z ends with a shrug and a settlement. And Beyonce, if the chatter is even half true, is now positioned to be the single voice inside that pyramid who could pull the whole thing down with one interview, one documentary, one album, or one very specific verse on a very specific summer song. And when the person who could pull it down is also the person that pyramid was built to celebrate, family, you no longer have a pyramid. You have a countdown. We already saw the first tremor. We just heard it. It was called Morning Dew Drunk, and it was released, of all days, on the 4th of July, Independence Day. Loves, come on. Come on. Beyonce did not pick July 4th because it was a convenient date. Beyonce picked July 4th because Beyonce, if you have been paying attention to Beyonce's career for the last decade, does not pick dates by accident. Beyonce picks dates the way generals pick battlefields. And the battlefield Beyonce selected for the beginning of this campaign was the one American holiday specifically about breaking away from a controlling authority. Read that back. Read that back one more time, and then tell me Beyonce does not know exactly what Beyonce is doing. Beyonce released a coded independence document on Independence Day, and half the culture clapped along because the drums were pretty. Now let me pivot for a second, because the story would not be complete without pulling in the ancillary casualties. Nicki Minaj, yes, Annika herself, has been circling this exact narrative for a full year. Nicki has said publicly that Roc Nation has been sabotaging her career. Nicki has said publicly that Jay-Z's fingerprints are on every stalled record deal, every blocked opportunity, every missing title payout she was allegedly owed after the streaming service changed hands. Nicki has posted the photos. Nicki has hinted at the receipts. Nicki has kept the temperature high enough that when Beyonce finally did decide to speak, there was already a smoldering fire for Beyonce's spark to catch. And the theory now running through every group chat in the culture is that Beyonce and Nicki are not enemies. That Beyonce and Nicki have, quietly, at arm's length, been working the same edge from opposite directions. Nicki loud, Beyonce silent. Nicki with a Twitter finger, Beyonce with a verse. Nicki with a rant, Beyonce with a rhyme scheme. Two of the most powerful women in modern music. Two of the biggest rivals in the popular imagination. Allegedly walking parallel roads toward the same door. And the door, family, has Jay-Z's name on it. And then there is Drake. Because Drake got a full couplet from Jay-Z at the Roots picnic, the rapper can't be my op. The jig is up line that had every hip-hop timeline in flames for a week. And Drake, if you have been watching, has stayed unusually quiet since. Drake has not clapped back. Drake has not subtweeted. Drake has not dropped a diss. Drake has simply watched. And the theory now, and I want to be careful with this because it is speculation, but it is speculation coming from serious voices, is that Drake is waiting. Drake is waiting for Beyonce to move first. Drake, according to some of the sharpest observers in the culture, has read the same tea leaves I am reading tonight. And Drake has decided that the smart play is to let the queen do the dismantling and clean up whatever is left standing afterward, which would explain why Drake's usually hyperreactive social feed has looked like a monastery for 6 straight weeks. Drake is not licking wounds. Drake is watching a woman with a longer knife walk into the room and taking notes. Family, this is bigger than a song. This is bigger than a diss. This is the beginning of a realignment that could reshape the entire architecture of modern hip-hop. And Beyonce, whether or not she ever confirms a single word of this out loud, has already changed the game by dropping this song, at this moment, on this date, with these bars. Because the culture reads the tea leaves faster than any court could, and the culture has already decided who is winning this quiet war. Look at the streaming numbers. Look at the annotation traffic. Look at whose name is trending and whose name is missing from the trend. Look at the shape of the story, and tell me if you have ever, in the entire history of celebrity marriages, seen a wife stage this precise a takedown on her own husband's record while smiling for the cameras at the same time. Let me pause here to say what nobody in the mainstream press is willing to say. Beyonce is not just an entertainer anymore. Beyonce is not just a vocalist. Beyonce is not just an icon. Beyonce has, over the last 5 years, quietly ascended into the kind of cultural authority we used to reserve for people like Prince, for people like Michael Jackson, for people like Aretha, for the artists we describe in reverent past tense. Beyonce is one of the last 3 living human beings who can put out a piece of art and change the direction of the conversation for a full week without lifting a promotional finger. And Beyonce, on Morning Dew Drunk, just used that authority in a way she has never used it before. Beyonce used it against her own husband. Beyonce used it inside her own household. And Beyonce, whether you are ready to admit it or not, just fired the first quiet shot in what could become the loudest divorce the culture has ever witnessed. And when Beyonce fires a quiet shot, it echoes for a decade. Which brings us to the meta question. Is a divorce actually on the table? Because the whispers say yes. The whispers have been saying yes for 18 months. The whispers say Beyonce has already had the conversation with her mother, Mama Tina, who, depending on which corner of the industry you are talking to, either encouraged the marriage in the first place as a career move or has quietly been counseling Beyonce through the pain of it for 2 decades. The whispers say Beyonce has already met with attorneys. The whispers say Beyonce has already had preliminary conversations about the division of the catalog, the imprint, the touring rights, the co-owned business ventures. The whispers say Beyonce is not filing anything until the timing is right, because the timing for a woman as strategic as Beyonce is always a weapon, and the timing, family, is now being tuned. That is what Morning Dew Drunk actually is. A tuning fork, a frequency check, a whisper into a very expensive microphone to see how the world responds before the real speech begins. And here is the piece that keeps me up at night. Beyonce, the same Beyonce who released Lemonade in 2016 as a masterclass in weaponized art, the same Beyonce who has spent a decade turning the private pain of her marriage into public monuments, is not going to file for divorce quietly. Beyonce is not going to leak it to a tabloid. Beyonce is not going to have a lawyer confirm it to a reporter at 3 in the morning. Beyonce, if and when Beyonce decides to walk, will announce it the way Beyonce announces everything. Beyonce will announce it with a project. Beyonce will announce it with a rollout. Beyonce will announce it with a body of work so thorough, so airtight, so devastating in its aesthetic and its accuracy, that by the time the world processes what is happening, Beyonce will already be halfway to the next chapter. And Jay-Z, family, will be reading the news about his own life from the same billboards the rest of us are reading it from. Morning Dew Drunk, family, might be the prologue. I told you this was going to be a wild one. I told you at the top of this video that once you heard what was actually smuggled into those bars, you would never hear the song the same way again. And now that we have walked all the way through the schemes, the biology bar, the sloppy morning flip, the Malibu passenger seat, the July 4th release date, the intervention sessions, the alleged receipts, the Nicki parallel, the Drake silence, the Diddy adjacency, the resurfaced federal report, the paternity test whispers, the Aaliyah photographs, the Mama Tina counseling arc, and the divorce chatter. You can see the shape of what is happening. Beyonce is not just an artist protecting a legacy. Beyonce is a woman finally, quietly, unmistakably taking her power back. And once a woman like Beyonce decides she is taking her power back, there is no boardroom, no lawyer, no publicist, no PR strategy on earth that can stop the next chapter from being written on her terms. And the industry is frozen. The industry does not know what to do. The industry has been protecting Jay-Z for so long that the industry has forgotten how to protect Jay-Z against his own wife. The industry is watching the tectonic plates shift in real time. And the industry, if you look closely at who has posted about the song and who has stayed silent, is already picking sides. Notice which labels have retweeted the release. Notice which executives have added it to their playlists. Notice which artists have gone out of their way to co-sign Beyonce's verse specifically, and which artists have said nothing at all. The silences are the story. The silences are always the story. Because in this industry, family, silence is how power tells you it is switching sides. So let me ask you the question that most of the culture is too polite to ask out loud. If Beyonce is really this deep in the game, if Beyonce is really this strategic, if Beyonce is really this ready, then what does Jay-Z actually have left to hold on to? He has the empire, sure. He has the catalog, sure. He has the buildings, the imprint, the streaming platform, the sports agency, the champagne label, the whole diamond-shaped monument to his own name. But everything he has, family, he built with her. Every peak he touched, she touched with him. And every headline that once made him look untouchable, she can now, if she chooses, reframe with a single verse. That is not a marriage anymore. That is a hostage situation with wedding rings on. And Beyonce, if the whispers are correct, has quietly, over the last 2 years, filed the escape route under a song about morning dew. Read that back one more time and tell me she is not the smartest strategist in modern music. Hit the like button if you rode with me through this whole breakdown. Hit subscribe if you want to be here for whatever Beyonce does next. And hit the bell so you do not miss the moment it moves, because it is moving. It is moving faster than most of the culture is ready for. And I would rather you get the update from me than from a screenshot on the timeline 3 hours after the fact. I promised you an inside seat. I meant it. Keep the seat. One last thing before I let you go, because I would be lying if I did not name it. Beyonce, in her final ad-lib on Morning Dew Drunk, whispers a line most listeners are still missing. The line is easy to miss, tucked behind a synth pad, mixed low the way Beyonce mixes the lines she wants you to earn. And the line, if you listen closely, is not a lyric. It is a signature. Beyonce signs the record. Beyonce signs it with a single word, a single breath, a single quiet claim of authorship over the entire song. And in the context of everything we have just walked through, that little signature reads less like a vocal flourish and more like a woman telling the world in the softest possible voice. I built this, I am building the next one, and I am the one who decides when the next chapter begins. A signature, family, is a legal thing. A signature is a claim. A signature is a fingerprint pressed into wet cement. And Beyonce just pressed her fingerprint into the middle of Jay-Z's summer. Beyonce, ma'am, I see you. I see the schemes. I see the plan. I see the pyramid. I see the way you have been walking quietly, deliberately, with your head high through every headline that would have broken a lesser woman. And I see the way you just used Jay-Z's own beat to remind the world who the actual architect of this empire has been the entire time. Whatever comes next, the album, the tour, the interview, the announcement, the filing, the documentary, the visual, the whisper, the culture is ready. The culture has been ready. And when Beyonce finally decides to say the quiet part out loud, I will be right here to walk you all through it, bar by bar, syllable by syllable, receipt by receipt. That is a promise. And in this line of work, family, a promise is the only currency worth keeping. Because the hip-hop royal family did not just drop a song this week. Beyonce cracked the throne. And that crack, as small as it looks from the outside, is the beginning of everything the culture has been waiting a decade to see. Stay with me. Stay close. Stay subscribed, because the next tremor is coming. And Beyonce will be the one to send it. Beyonce always is. Beyonce always has been. Beyonce always will be. Write that down. Save the timestamp. When the timeline explodes in the next 2 weeks, and it will, family, it will, you will want to remember that you heard the shape of the storm first, right here on this channel tonight. Loves, drop your theories below. Which line on Morning Dew Drunk hit you the hardest? The biology bar, the sloppy morning flip, the Malibu couplet, or the quiet signature at the end? And do you think Beyonce is truly building toward a divorce album? Or is Beyonce simply reminding Jay-Z and the culture and the world that Beyonce has always been the real one running the empire? Tell me. Because the answer to that question, family, is the answer to what hip-hop looks like for the next 10 years. And Beyonce has already picked her side. Now it is our turn to pick ours. See you in the next one, family. And when I say the next one, trust me, it is going to be bigger than this one, because the tremors have started, and Beyonce is holding the epicenter in the palm of her hand. Family, one more thing before I fully close this out, because I know the smart ones in the comments are already typing it. What does Beyonce actually gain from doing this on wax instead of doing it in a lawyer's office? And that right there is the smartest question anybody could ask about this entire situation. Because Beyonce, for all of her strategic brilliance, does not actually need money from Jay-Z. Beyonce is a billionaire in her own right. Beyonce's touring machine outgrosses most small nations. Beyonce's masters, her publishing, her image licensing, her Ivy Park equity, none of that requires Jay-Z's signature to keep printing. So the leverage Beyonce is playing for is not financial. The leverage Beyonce is playing for is narrative, and narrative in the year 2026 is worth more than any settlement number a court could stamp on a page. Because whoever controls the narrative controls what the next generation remembers. And Beyonce, with Morning Dew Drunk, with the scheme in the biology bar, with the Malibu flip, with the Independence Day release date, with the intervention sessions, with the Nicki parallel, with the Drake silence, with the Diddy shadow, with the federal report whisper, is quietly staking her claim to write the ending of this marriage herself, in her own voice, on her own record, with her own vocabulary. That is why Beyonce did it in a song. That is why Beyonce did it in melody. That is why Beyonce did it in a way Jay-Z cannot appeal, cannot subpoena, cannot bury under a settlement. Because the moment those bars hit streaming, the narrative left Jay-Z's hands forever. And Beyonce, family, has been waiting 20 years to hold that pen. 20 years of Lemonade drops and Renaissance rollouts and Cowboy Carter victories and quiet retreats every time a new lawsuit hit the docket. 20 years of watching Jay-Z shape the story of their marriage in interviews, in freestyles, in Roots picnic sets, in every possible venue where Beyonce was not standing next to a microphone to correct him. And now, on this record, Beyonce finally reached over, took the microphone out of his hand, and said with a smile, with a hook, with a sequin dress and a wave of the wrist, "My turn, my verse, my story, my ending." Beyonce took the pen back. And once Beyonce has the pen, family, nobody in the industry is fast enough to grab it out of her hand.